Hello and welcome to our virtual fall sports night. It's always great to see everybody. And let's face it, meeting in person is a lot better in anticipation of a fun and a competitive and an exciting season. But as we continue to prepare, here we are streaming via YouTube, which we all know isn't quite the same. But nevertheless, we are excited about new beginnings, and I thank everybody for joining us this evening for our annual Fall Sports Night. Before we begin with our presentation, I just want to take a moment to thank our community for their support over the past few months. It's been an overwhelming amount of support as we navigate these new challenges, and it couldn't be more proud to be part of this community. And with that said, I just also want to share how proud I am of our students, our student athletes as well for the way that they hung in there and fought through and persevered during these challenging times. And so as we move into this presentation, we have a lot of information to share. Again, I'm grateful for everybody who was able to join us tonight. And with that said, let's begin. Okay, so I figured it was most appropriate to start with what's on everybody's mind, and that is the guidance that's been that we're working with from the local and state authorities, the guidance that we're reading from the PIAA, and right now, really what we're working with is the guidance that there are no organized sports until we're in green, okay? And the good news is that we're starting to sense that green could actually be right around the corner. So what we're looking at here, and as you can see on the, towards the bottom of this slide here, is that our interpretation from the PIAA is that once we're in green and it's July 1st, we will be able to go. And we'll be able to get started with our off-season open and voluntary programming that our fall coaches and some of our winter and spring coaches as well offer during the summer months. I will say that it's not going to look quite the same. There are going to be some restrictions and limitations and guidelines for coaches. But I just want everybody to know that it's all in the spirit of safety, and making sure that the safety of our student athletes is at the core of the decisions that we make and the way that we operate. And so as we phase into our summer programming, we've developed a task force who's been working hard to study the guidance that's been coming out, to research best practices. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Vogler, who is leading our task force, and he'll be able to share more about what summer programming could look like for our athletic program. So with that said, Mr. Vogler, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Crater. So as Pat said, we all want sports to resume, but sports aren't going to exactly look the same at first. So what we did was we developed a task force in regards to reopening athletics, and we have representatives of all the different departments and stakeholders that are kind of represented in athletics. So we have members of our facilities department, communications, transportation, coaching staff, athletics department, communications department, and our school nurses. So really our goal is to get people playing in the safest way possible. And we really look at it as four facets of health and safety. We're not just considering the coronavirus precautions, but also we've gone through this period of detraining and where athletes have not been around their coaches. So we do have some considerations for avoiding overuse injuries and avoiding exertional and heat illnesses, so that we're prepared. And throughout our goal of still offering sports at this time is to really emphasize the physical and mental wellness in all components of it. So some of the things that might look a little different in the plan are that there will be screenings prior to every practice and workout, and I'll explain those on the next slide. and there's going to be a phased approach to returning. So lower risk activities might be able to resume what looks like their normal sport earlier than higher risk activities, which are really right now being defined as, sports with more contact. So all sports will be able to start as soon as we get the okay from the PIAA and the governor's office and local health officials. But all sports are going to have a gradual ramp up of activity, and depending on the risk of that sport, we'll have different kind of phased approaches. So we're really going off recommendations from the CDC, the National Federation of High School Sports, the Corey Stringer Institute, and the Department of Education. So all the key experts in those organizations are kind of where we're gathering this plan from. And our plan really has an emphasis on all of the risk mitigation strategies that I'm sure everyone is familiar with in society right now. So hand hygiene, facial coverings when appropriate. Obviously, for athletes during exertion, it's not appropriate, but for coaches and for pre-practice activities, it might be appropriate. Really emphasizing personal hydration and increasing cleaning, and when possible, social distancing. And then a key part of this plan is to make sure that all of our stakeholders and everyone involved knows all the facets of it. So we're going to have education sessions for our coaches, which we already had one previously this afternoon, education sessions for our athletes moving forward, and then education sessions for our community. And throughout the summer, our administration, myself, and our school nurses will be available to kind of provide some education and resources so that our student athletes can feel safe and make sure that they are keeping everyone else safe. So going into the next slide, we'll talk about the screenings a little bit. So the screening on the right, for anyone that came into the school to pick up anything from your lockers or drop off uniforms or textbooks or anything, you should be familiar with this survey because it's the same survey that our facilities department and school nurses are using for people to come into the building. So we'll have this same screening. We ask that student athletes are going to take it before they arrive on campus on the day of their workout or open gym or open turf. If you have any yes answers, so if you've had any of those symptoms, or if you've been exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID-19 or is in the process of being tested and isolated, then we ask that you stay home. If there's a yes, so a positive answer to one of those questions, you'll receive an email from either myself or an administrator kind of on what the next steps are. Also, in addition to this, during the screening, the one thing we're going to ask more is reminders so that you know that you have them. Are 3 questions. Are you going to have adequate water supply for the day? Because like all public places, our water fountains are shut off currently, and we are not going to have communal water sources, which is an extra risk mitigation factor. Do you have a facial covering with you? Again, we don't expect athletes to wear that during exertion, but there are going to be times when it's appropriate for athletes to wear a facial mask. And then have you practiced good hand hygiene? So all of those questions are questions kind of more as a reflection and say like, okay, I need to bring my water, I need to do this, and I need to do this before I get to practice today. And then once you go, coaches will take attendance and make sure that everyone's screening is complete. And if your screening is not complete, you can't participate until it is. And the answers are no to these questions. So this mantra down there below in blue and gold, I took from USA Lacrosse. So their big thing now is come to practice prepared. And part of that is because we won't have locker rooms available. We won't have showers available or any of those types of facilities. So what you wear to practice is what you're going to be wearing for that workout. So come prepared and then get our work in and get our work out. So we're really limiting the socializing and congregating that happens before and after workouts. And so you'll see more information in the upcoming weeks on education and resources available here. But if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email in the meantime. And we look forward to seeing our athletes back on campus, but doing so in a safe and healthy manner. So I'll pass the microphone back over to Mr. Crater.
All right, so thank you once again, Mr. Vogler. And just to echo what Mr. Vogler said, there's a lot of information here, and there's things are changing rapidly. But our department is committed to educating our coaches, educating our athletes, and also educating our community. And so over the next few weeks, there is going to be opportunities and information that is made available to make sure that we have a safe return to sports. And so thanks to all those on that athletics task force for making sure that the return is safe. So let me transition now into our regular programming in preparation for our fall season. And the slides that I'm going to go through here talk a little bit about our program. It gets into some of our rules and expectations that we have, and then we'll move into the family ID registration and some athletic training information as well. Just a housekeeping item, we anticipate that we'll be finished here around 5:45, and at that point you'll be able to transition into your individual team meetings to meet your coaches. So we're looking forward to that as well. But let me get started here with the story of the three bricklayers. And many of you have heard this story before about the woman who was walking down the street and saw a construction site and asked a bricklayer what he was doing there. And the first bricklayer simply said, "Well, I'm laying bricks." And so the woman walks down the street, gets onto the next block, and says to the next bricklayer, what are you working on here?" And that bricklayer says, "I'm building a wall." And so she walks down the street a little further and into the next block and comes by a third bricklayer. And that bricklayer says to the question, "What are you doing here?" He says, "I'm building a beautiful cathedral." And that story gets me thinking about what is it that we're building here in our program, in our athletic program? Or let me phrase it this way, what is our higher purpose? Are we coaching the team, or are we empowering kids to succeed in life and contribute to society? What are we doing here? And in reflecting on the higher purpose, reflecting on my higher purpose, I ask myself, well, how did I get here? And so I think back to when I played sports, and I had an amazing experience playing school sports. It wasn't always perfect, but I made friends, I had fun, I stayed healthy, I learned a lot about life, and I had those opportunities to play and compete, which I loved so much. And my experience in sports had such a positive influence on my life that I ended up here working in athletics, having a career as an athletic director at Unionville Chadds Ford. And so my higher purpose is to support our program, which really goes way beyond the wins and losses and X's and O's, in a way that will ultimately have a positive influence on the life of our athletes. And we're really proud of our program because it's about those opportunities to play and compete, which is really exciting. And that's what our athletes really love to do. But there's a lot more depth. We're here to make friends. We're here to have fun. We're here to learn life lessons and leadership lessons. And we're just really proud of what's happening here in our program for all that we do on and off the field. And with that said, I'd like to once again welcome our fall athletes, our parents, guardians, community members, and all those who are going to be part of our program this fall. So let me move on here and transition into what we really consider the North Star of our program and in everything that we do. And we're talking about building a program. We're not just coaching the team, we're building a program here. And we're really building our program on a foundation of values and standards. And I'll just speak about this for a little bit. By now, hopefully you're familiar with the values and standards, and you've heard about it and saw the values and standards. And really this started off a few years ago as what we were calling the Code of Conduct Committee. And the goal of that committee was simply to put down a list of rules on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and then hand those rules out and make sure that everybody's following those rules. But we knew from the very beginning that it needed to be so much more. And we knew as this committee evolved that really what we were looking for is a standard. And so the values and standards were formed with a lot of work from various stakeholders, parents, administrators, school board members, certainly athletes, coaches, and we got a lot of input. We met quite a few times. We surveyed the community, and this is what we came up with our values and standards. And now here we are, subsequently in a committee called the Values Ambassadors, because at the end of our Values and Standards program, once that was actually adopted by our school board, we knew that we needed to keep this document alive. And so the vision and the mission for the Values Ambassadors is to foster a habit of thought in our community that reflects our values and standards. And so our values and standards have either they include values such as teamwork and integrity, perseverance, accountability, competitiveness, and perhaps most importantly, respect. And it's been nothing but a positive for our program. It's had a great impact on our coaches, our kids, our parents, our community, and so we're just really grateful that we have these values and standards, and we lean on them all the time. And so there is a copy of the values and standards on the district's or the athletics website, and I would encourage you to check out our values and standards, study them, reflect them, talk about them. But they will also be part of the program this fall, and these lessons will be built into practices and games and just part of the overall program. And so moving on to the next slide, it's just a little introduction to the Values Ambassadors. As I was speaking about, once again, to foster a habit of thought in our community that reflects our values and standards. And the Values Ambassadors have really done a lot of work this past year, but there are two projects that I want to highlight here. So if we can move on to the next slide, I will share with you. We have a subcommittee in our Values Ambassadors that's all about leadership. And so we're using our values and standards as a leadership tool, really, for our student athletes. And so we have a subcommittee called the Student Athlete Leadership Development Subcommittee, and that's led by Coach Clark. And so they've been doing a lot of talking about student athlete leadership and what we can do to support our athletes as emerging leaders. And so just recently, some of you have participated in this or maybe saw it on social media, but our athletics student athlete leadership development subcommittee presented this leadership series. And as you can see here, the three topics are actually three of our standards word for word, and we were able to align those to the leadership topic. And so we look forward to continuing to support our student athletes, our emerging leaders in their role. And so kudos to our Values Ambassadors for putting that together. And then just moving on here, another initiative from our Values Ambassadors, which we are really looking forward to rolling out this fall, is our self-advocacy policy. And this is something that really stood out to the Values Ambassadors. And in the spirit of communicating effectively and appropriately, which is one of our standards, we created this self-advocacy policy with the help of our communications department to present this nice infographic. But really, once again, this was developed with a lot of hours from various stakeholders, once again, students, coaches, administrators, board members, and parents, to put together this self-advocacy policy that we are very confident will have a positive impact on our students' ability to live up to our district's mission. And so this self-advocacy policy is something that'll be part of our program starting next fall, and we look forward to seeing the benefits of this work here. So okay, so let's move along here, and let me introduce some of the very important people to our department. And let me start with Mrs. Weaver. She is our athletics office manager, and she does so much for our middle school program and our high school program. And we really just couldn't do it without Mrs. Weaver. She's really the unsung hero. She does so much that nobody even knows, and we couldn't do it without her. So thank you to Mrs. Weaver. Mr. Vogler, you already met him in this presentation. He's our head athletic trainer and athletics coordinator. Sydney Schnars is our assistant athletic trainer from ATI. And Kathy Walshell, who you'll be meeting with later on in this presentation, is our middle school athletic trainer, but also supports our high school program and manages our family ID. And then Wendy Curtis Tribal, she works at Patton Middle School, and she is always willing to help out athletics as well. So thank you very much to those people. And moving on to the next slide here, a number of other people who are very important to our program. Let me give a shout out to Paul Heron. He's our head groundskeeper. Dave Boyer, who's our transportation scheduler. Mark Klein, who's our head custodian. Brett Culberson, who's also one of our head custodians. And then we have a number of people who work to support our athletes, our coaches, and our games. We have game workers, ticket sellers, announcers, scoreboard operators, and then of course our officials as well. And we really just couldn't do it without all of these folks. So if you happen to know some of these people, or if you've seen these people around, or you interact with them in the upcoming season, please make sure you say thank you to the very hardworking people who support our athletes. All right, so moving on here, just a few quick facts about our program. We have one of the largest athletic programs in Southeast Pennsylvania. And relative to the size of our school, that's something that we're very proud of. We have a tremendous amount of participation and support from our community. Our students like to be involved, which is tremendous. And so we have 28 high school programs, 18 middle school programs, as you see here, 3 club sports and 1 unified team. And we have over 1,000 athletes who are out there working hard, coaches who are working hard. And so the size of our program is just something that we're really proud of. We're proud of all the opportunities that we're able to offer to our students. So with that said, let me move on here and just talk a little bit about where we compete. And so I've broken this down to league, district, and state information. And so our league information, we compete in the American division of the Chestnut League. That's our high school program. And our middle school team competes in the middle school, or the Chestnut Middle School League. At the high school level, there's opportunities to compete at the district level and then the state level. So District 1 is made up of Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, and Delaware counties. It's arguably one of the most competitive districts in Pennsylvania. And I'm proud to say that we are very competitive within District 1 as well. And then Unionville High School is also governed by the PIAA, and that is the state information. And that's the governing body who also organizes the inter-district championships, the state playoffs. They adopt rules, they enforce rules. And that's just a little bit of background information about who we compete with and who governs us and how it works. So as I mentioned before, our program is full of opportunities. So as you can see here in this slide, lots of great opportunities for our athletes. Tonight we're here to talk about fall sports, but we really consider ourselves a multi-sport school, which simply means that we encourage our athletes to participate in at least 2 sports. And so once this fall season is underway, take a look at what we offer in the wintertime, and it's never too late to try something new. And we can move on here to the middle school slide as well to take a look at that and what we offer in the middle school. But it's never too late to try something new, to get involved in multiple activities. But again, it's just the number of activities that we offer here, and we can move on to the next slide with our club sports as well. And just something that we're really proud of, and just the fact that we're able to offer these opportunities to our students. And so, so there we are. Okay, so let me transition into some of the language from our athletics handbook. So our athletics handbook is approved annually by our school board. It's posted on the athletics website. Also, when you register on Family ID, you have to sign off that you've read and reviewed the handbook. But what I'd like to do here is just review a couple of the hot topics or highlights from the handbook. Certainly the handbook is more comprehensive than the next few slides. So it is important to review it entirely. But But let me get into some of the things that we feel like are highlights from the handbook. And really, this first slide here, commitment to the team. And to make a long story short, we expect our athletes to honor the commitment that they've made to their team. And that's actually one of our standards. And it's a great life lesson and something that we value. Yeah, middle school games and practices are after school, while high school sports can have varying schedules, including evenings and weekends. But your coaches will talk more about the specific schedules, and they will outline their attendance policies. But it's safe to say that attendance at practices and games is mandatory unless excused by the coach under unusual circumstances. So I would definitely encourage everybody to reference this section in the handbook, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and be sure to ask questions to your coaches in advance if you feel like there's going to be a conflict with the ability to make the commitment to the team. All right. So moving on to the next slide here, this is our attendance policy. I'm not going to go through this bullet by bullet, but I just wanted to bring this up here because it is a highlight from the handbook. We do receive inquiries throughout the year on our attendance policy. So this is something that, as you're looking through the handbook, definitely take a stop at this section and make sure that you have an understanding of what it is that we expect from our athletes in terms of attendance. But really what I can say here to sum up this entire slide is that it's just best practice to be at school on time every day, certainly, unless you're sick or there's an emergency circumstance, and you'll be good to go for after school activities and sports. Okay, so moving on to the next topic here. This topic is about communicating concerns, and really, as I talked about a few slides ago, with the work from our values ambassadors and the self-advocacy policy, really we want our athletes to be able to self-advocate and speak to their coach if there's an issue. Ultimately, we believe that that the best outcome happens when this protocol is followed. But really, this communicating concern piece in the handbook was built by our values ambassadors and those who worked on the self-advocacy piece here. So this is another section that you're definitely going to want to review as you dig into the handbook. Okay, so moving on here, and this is just some information about playing time and competition, competitiveness. And as you see here, we have our middle school level, our JV level, and then our varsity level. But in terms of the games and competitions itself, these are good guidelines to help everybody understand our beliefs on playing time. And really what this slide here is saying is that the older you get, the higher level you're participating in, the more competitive it becomes. And so as you'll see here in the middle school section here, our coaches are going to try to get everybody into every game. Equal playing time is not guaranteed, but our coaches are aware that those who are meeting the expectations, those athletes are deserving of opportunities to compete. And as athletes transition into the JV level here, one of the purposes of junior varsity is really to prepare athletes to compete at the varsity level. And so again, equal playing time is not guaranteed at this level, but our coaches will try to get everybody good playing time in the spirit of preparation for the next level, and also in the spirit of having an enjoyable and a meaningful experience on the field as well. And then once you get into the varsity level, this is our most competitive program at Unionville. And this is where the head coach determines playing time and positions according to the team needs. And at this level, playing time is not guaranteed. Okay, so if you have any questions about that as well, certainly reach out, and your coaches will be able to provide more information on playing time and competition. So. All right, so just as I start to wrap it up here, I want to share this slide, which is an important slide. And this calendar was actually sent out via email a few weeks ago. So if you didn't catch that email, you can also find it on the athletics website. It actually has the year-round calendar, but I just took the little section from fall sports here. But I just want everybody to make sure that they review this. They understand when sports start for their program, because really on day one, we expect everybody to be ready to go. And so your coaches will have more information about expectations for being there on day one and what they expect on day one and what you need on day one. But this calendar, as I said, you can find it on the website, gives you a good idea of how to plan your summer vacations and schedules. So, all right. And before I kick it over to our sports medicine department, again, it's really important to us that we're communicating and that our families and our athletes have access to the information that they need. So I would encourage everybody to navigate our website, where you can find coach contact information, season schedules. There's a document on there, a live document that's updated in real time with upcoming game schedules, lots of great news and events. And then also we are on social media. So Twitter, Unionville and Patton Athletics. Our high school program is also on Instagram as well. So that's another place where you can learn more about our program and hear all about the good news and fun stuff that's happening. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Walshell to talk about family ID and online sports registration. But thank you once again, and you can take it from here, Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Crater. Like Mr. Crater said, my name's Kathy Walshell. I'm the athletic trainer for the middle school, and I also manage the Family ID program. Family ID is an online web-based program that we use to register your child for sports. There's a link there that you can see, but you can also go on the UCFSD Athletics website, or you can go on familyid.com and search for UCFSD, and you'll be able to find our registration site. If your child has a registration from a previous sport, then their information is already saved in there, and all you have to do is choose them as the participant, and it'll populate all their demographic information. As far as registration due dates, those are listed there. Football's first for the high school, and then the other sports for the high school, followed by Patton football because they start earlier, and then the other Patton sports. Those dates are all readily available there. The PIAA SIPA, which is the physical form, the section 6 must be completed and uploaded in the physicians section of the registration. That form has to be dated no earlier than June 1st, 2020. The PIAA has already said that they're going to be requiring physicals for this school year, so you may want to give your doctors a call. I know a lot of doctors haven't been seeing patients, and there may be some delay in getting your child scheduled, so I would give them a call as soon as possible and see if you can set up their well visit. So what to expect after you register? Once you complete your registration, you're going to receive 2 emails. The first one's just going to indicate that your registration is completed. If you do not receive this, it means you haven't fully completed the registration. Sometimes people will initiate the registration, but they won't fully submit it, and they think they're done, but they're not. So if you don't receive that completion email, go back in and look and see if that registration is still needing submitted. After you do that, once we review it, you're going to receive an email that's indicating whether the registration is approved or whether there's some issues that need correction. If you do have some issues that need correction, the email that you receive will specifically say what the problem is. As far as activity fees, we have RevTrack now that we're using in Family ID, and you can pay using RevTrack, or you can submit cash or check to either the athletics office at the high school or to the main office at Patton. If you have any questions about that, feel free to email me, and my email is listed there. I'm also on the athletics website. So just to highlight real quickly a couple of common mistakes that we see in the registrations. Sometimes your doctor will forget to check that your child is cleared to participate. So if that's not checked, then that's a problem. Sometimes the physicians will forget to sign it. Sometimes they'll forget to date it. Or they may date it. Let's say your son or daughter had a physical in December. They can sign the physical on the date that they reauthorize it, but what they might do is actually go back and put the December date instead of putting the date that they sign it. So since that date has to be after June 1st, that creates a problem. A couple of other mistakes that we see with the registration is sometimes when the parents, there's an agreement section, and they'll go through the agreement section, and the parent will sign every single block as with their signature, instead of having the athlete go in and sign as the athlete themselves. So please make sure that you just sign as the parent and that the athlete signs as the athlete. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free to email me, and I'm more than happy to answer them. I'm now going to turn it over to Mr. Vogler, who's going to talk about some athletic training procedures.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm going to go over a few of the procedures for our athletic training department. So for those of you that don't know, athletic trainers, we are healthcare professionals who work with physically active populations. So between our entire department, 7 through 12, there are 3 of us who work interchangeably throughout the departments. Again, if someone's injured at Unionville or Patton, they will usually be evaluated by one of us first. If it's a minor injury, usually we'll call the parent or touch base with the athlete on some minor treatment tips. If it's a moderate or a significant injury, parents will always be contacted, so we will call you. Then depending on the severity of the injury, an athlete may need to see a physician. And if that's the case, or if they see an outside physician or an outside provider on their own, we do need a doctor's note clearing them to return to athletics. That's a PIAA policy. So that has to either be completed on the PIAA form, which we can provide, or we can have an actual doctor's note. And then after that, athletes must bring the doctor's note in and check in with us. And depending on the sport, they might need to be functionally tested so that coaches can understand their limitations or if they're able to fully participate. And then I put this little caveat down at the bottom: concussions and skin lesions have additional requirements from the PIAA, the NFHS, and state laws. So in addition to clearance, there's addition to physician clearance, there are additional protocols that need to be followed in those cases. So going on to the next slide, just some tips and resources is the biggest thing that I'll say is that, overall, we're here for the health and safety of student athletes. So while we want our teams to be competitive and we want our teams to win, ultimately we're here for the health and safety of our students. So that being said, whatever we can do to help your child or to help you if you are one of our athletes, let us know. We're here to be a resource. We're here to be helpful. And that's what we're here for. So just some tips of things that, are protocols that sometimes need reminders. Oh, actually, could we go back one slide? I'm sorry. Just some protocols is that we do have some weather safety guidelines that, particularly in the months when it starts getting colder, need to be followed. So we encourage athletes to always make sure they have proper clothing with them in their lockers, so that we know people are prepared for the cold weather. We do ask that in addition to filling it out on your SIPPs, if you have an EpiPen or an inhaler or an emergency medication or an emergency medical condition, please reach out so we can put a face with a name and we can have that established relationship. So in an emergency situation, we're aware of who you are. And then overall, one thing that we ask parents, the biggest recovery tools that are available are proper rest, nutrition, and sleep. So, parents and athletes, whenever you can help by practicing healthy habits, it will go a long way for the overall health and safety of everyone. So now I'm ready for the next slide, sorry. So just real quick, we do have some partnerships that are needed to kind of help our program run. And so I just want to introduce them now just so that people are familiar with these names and organizations. If you see someone in our department wearing a shirt maybe for a different department or a different organization. So our team physician who works with us as athletic trainers pretty regularly is Dr. David Yuka at Premier Orthopedics. One of the benefits to this partnership is that we have priority appointments and that, if there's ever a health and safety issue, we will consult him as an athletic training staff and as an administration staff. We also have a partnership with ATI Physical Therapy, who provides an assistant athletic trainer to us, which is Sydney Schnars, as Mr. Crater had talked about in an earlier slide. And the benefit to that is that we also get priority appointments at their Kennett Square clinic. So Ms. Schnars or myself or Ms. Walshall can help prioritize those appointments. And then one of the last things here is that every once in a while you might see some Westchester University college students. So we do get interns through Westchester, and they receive an educational resource through us, but they also are a very valuable part of our department. So, and then I will kick it back to Mr. Crater for the last slide, telling you the next steps as to where to go from here.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Vogler. Thank you, Mrs. Walshell. And just as we wrap it up, once again, I just want to thank everybody who was able to be here via YouTube this evening. Again, I know it's not the same, but it's still important that we're able to share this information and get together and meet our coaches, which is what is coming up next. And so, as you can see here on the slide, team meetings are going to start at 5:45 p.m. The Zoom links to these meetings were sent out previously via email. Additionally, if you lost that email or if something happened and you can't find it, the links are also going to be posted on the athletics website, and so you can see the link there. And when you go to that website, a pop-up screen will come up and lead you to a Google Doc where you can find those links as well. So we want to make sure that everybody can find the link to their team meetings, which again are going to start at 5:45 p.m. I'm also going to open up my Zoom room and hang out in there for a little while. If anybody has any general Q&As that they'd like to ask, feel free to pop in. And like I said, I'll be hanging out in there for a little while. But once again, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy your next meetings with your coaches. And I'll just say this once again, I cannot wait to be back and see our athletes and work with our coaches once again in person at Unionville and at Patton. But in the meantime, stay well and thank you very much.